On May 29, 2026, the San Francisco Giants announced that third base coach, Hector Borg, had been reassigned to player development. 2 days earlier, shortstop Willy Adames had been thrown out at home plate in the 8th inning of a 3-2 loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Giants lost. Firing a third base coach in May is almost unprecedented in Major League Baseball. It almost never happens, which raises an obvious question. If this had been building for months, why did it take until the end of May for anyone to act? The answer is not about the Diamondbacks game. It is about a measurement problem that has existed in baseball for decades, and a coaching role the sport still does not know how to evaluate. Hector Borg was not an outsider. When the Giants hired him, he had spent nearly 2 decades in the San Francisco organization, working through player development and multiple levels of the Giants' minor league system. When first-year manager Tony Vitello was building his staff before the 2026 season, he sought Borg out specifically, describing him as someone who had been around baseball a ton. Borg told reporters exactly what kind of coach he was going to be. "I am an aggressive third base coach," he said. That background matters, because what followed was not the story of an unknown quantity getting in over his head. It was the story of a trusted coach making decisions that the data could see clearly, and the organization could not act on fast enough. The first major incident came on April 7th against the Philadelphia Phillies. A runner was sent from second base on a hit to right field. The right fielder had one of the strongest arms in the league and was playing shallow. The runner was thrown out easily. Then came the Young-Hoo Lee play, and this one was different. Lee was running from first on a ball hit up the middle. The center fielder dove and missed. The left fielder was right there to back him up and got the ball almost immediately. Lee had rounded second and was heading to third. He was not in scoring position. The outfielder had the ball cleanly and was barely 30 feet away from the infield. Borg waved Lee home anyway. Analysts watching the replay could not figure out what Borg had seen. It was the kind of send that looked wrong before the throw had even left the outfielder's hand. Even before Lee began his slide, the play looked finished. The outfielder had the ball. The infield was already preparing for the throw. There was no desperation, no rushed exchange, no defensive mistake waiting to happen. The risk was obvious. The reward was not. There was no hesitation in the outfield. No bobble, no bad angle. The ball was fielded quickly, and the throw beat Lee easily. He was injured on the slide. The Giants had given away a base runner for nothing, and nobody in the press box or in the dugout had seen it coming before it happened. A few games later, Gilbert was held at third on a ball that would have scored him easily. Borg misread it and did not send him. A Giants player was caught on camera, calling it very, very conservative. The Giants did not score. The very next game, Borg overcorrected, sending a runner on a routine hit to right field, who was thrown out without a close play. Too hesitant one day, too aggressive the next. The decision-making was not just wrong in individual moments. It was inconsistent in a way that suggested no reliable read behind any of it. A third base coach who is simply aggressive can be managed. A third base coach whose calls have no predictable logic cannot. And then came the Diamondbacks game. That ended everything. Willy Adames broke for home in the 8th inning of a 1-run game against Arizona. The Giants were trailing by 1. They needed a run. Adames was on second base when Luis Arraez hit a single to left center. The left fielder, Ryan Waldschmidt, got to the ball quickly. Replays showed Adames was 7 to 8 steps away from third base when Waldschmidt fielded it. Standard base running requires a runner to be rounding third and building speed by the time an outfielder touches a hit. Adames was effectively standing still at the moment Borg waved him. The throw was not difficult. He was out by a wide margin, 2 outs on the bases. In the same 8th inning, trailing by 1 against a division rival, The Giants had not beaten in 6 consecutive games. The inning ended. The Giants lost 3-2. If you enjoy the hidden stories behind baseball's biggest decisions, subscribe on my channel. We put a lot of effort into it. Manager Tony Vitello was asked directly the next day whether he planned to make a coaching change. He said he was trying to figure out how to wake up that morning after a bad night of sleep. 2 days later, Borg was gone. By late May, the numbers had been painting an ugly picture for weeks. The Giants ranked dead, last in the major leagues, in base running runs above average, sitting at -4.9 according to Fangraphs. Their 29 outs on the bases placed them 5th worst in baseball. They were also last in total runs scored, sitting 14 games behind the first-place Los Angeles Dodgers. Beat writers were citing the -4, 9-figure. Fan sites were tracking it. The warning signs were public. Base running runs above average is a park and context-adjusted metric that measures how many runs a team gains or loses through base running decisions compared to league average. A value of -4.9 means the Giants had already cost themselves nearly 5 runs through base running alone, runs that a last-place offense simply could not afford to give back. The base running problems were not a footnote to a larger offensive struggle. They were a direct, measurable drain on a team that was last in runs scored, game after game, in situations where a correct read would have changed the outcome. The structural problem with evaluating third base coaches is that their decisions are genuinely difficult to isolate. Player speed matters, game situation matters. A team desperate for offense will coach its runners differently than a team with a cushion. But the Lee play did not happen because the Giants were desperate. The Adames send did not happen because the offense was struggling. Those were misreads of where the ball and the runner were at the same moment. No context changes that. 1 year earlier, Milwaukee led Major League Baseball with 19.7 base running runs above average. Their third base coach, Quentin Berry, was credited for much of it and was hired away by the Chicago Cubs. Good coaching had become measurable. The Cubs did not hire Berry because he seemed like a good fit. They hired him because the numbers showed exactly what he had done. The Giants hired Borg because they trusted him. He was well respected in the organization. None of those factors said anything about what he would do in the third base coaching box during a tie game in the 8th inning. When Ron took over on an interim basis, he brought decades of with the organization. He was steady, known, experienced. He was the opposite of an unknown quantity, which is exactly how the Giants had described Hector Borg 5 months earlier. The data showed it in April. It showed it in May. And the Giants acted at the end of May when the season was already damaged. That gap between the data existing and the decision being made is where games are lost. Baseball has the tools to catch these problems early. The numbers were public. The pattern was visible. The question baseball still has not answered is why it takes a viral moment for anyone to look at what the data has been saying all along.